Okay, everybody. Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. Welcome to today's panel discussion on UX research from the industry professionals. And this is Lou from Grad Affairs. It's so great to see all of you here on Fridays. All right, I know that many students were interested in learning data analysis, research, user experiences, consumer insight. Quite often they ask me questions like, Lou, what does UXR do? What exactly is UX research? And what and how I need to do if I want to do a UX track in the future while I graduate. Instead of me helping you explore different resources and find the answers, I thought it would be great if we could create an online classroom opportunity and learn the real knowledge on UX research from the real UX researchers from industries. So here we are today. All right, I will be recording today's panel discussion and share the recording with all of you later today. Okay, so here with us today are three outstanding panelists who all have very deep connection with COM. The first panelist, she used to teach at COM for over 10 years. She's an angel in our eyes. We respect her, we miss her, and we really want her back. The second panelist, who also spent many years studying at COM, got her master's program and then complete her PhD degree here at COM. The last panelist, the third one, she is a popular star. Why? Because her photo has been hanging there on COM's hallway wall for God knows how many years moving forward. So aside from all these awesome panelists today, we have our Professor Michael Elasmar as a special guest here with us today. And Dr. Elasmar is going to offer his insight on UX research and his advice to all the grad students on how and what you should do at the moment if you want to do a UX job after graduate. All right, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, let me just give you the special guest and also our panelists today. And then let's talk about the two-part, what does UXR do, what exactly UXR, and then what we need to do if we want to do a UXR job. So ladies and gentlemen, let's just go to the panelists and then let the panelists introduce themselves first. So Mina, hi, how about you go first?
Good to see everyone. Lou, I love your energy, and it's just so great to be back and see a lot of familiar faces, and I'm just like so excited to be here. I'm Mina Tsay-Vogel. I am currently a UX research manager at Meta. I work within Reality Labs, and I have been, before I made this leap, just joined Meta back in June, and I was a professor at BU. I was teaching communication theory, research methods classes for 13 years, and before then I had been in academia and got my PhD in mass communication. So my research is at the intersections of comm, tech, and social psych. And I am just really thrilled to talk with all of you, and some of just and then just a quick plug of like with the CRC, the Communication Research Center is a place super dear to my heart. And I you know, just very much inspired by all of Michael's work and leadership in the center, and so much of that inspired me to continue to think about how to find ways to bridge academia and the industry. So I'm just really excited to be here. So thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for being here with us, Mina. Like I said, we all miss you. The next one, Aona.
Hi, my name is Aona, and yes, lots of familiar faces here. So very, very psyched to be here. So yes, I graduated from COM. I was an MCR student. I graduated in ostensibly 2016, but actually like technically 2015, end of 2015. And I have been a UXR ever since. So I have worked in across several industries, but mostly all in the tech sector. So I have some like words here like B2B, B2C. I don't know if that rings a bell to grad students, but it means like business to business versus business to consumer. So several industries. So I've worked at software engineering companies. I've worked at hospitality industry. like Disney parks and also Airbnb. So I am currently a UXR manager on Google Search, and our team's focus area is search personalization. So next time when you see some personalized search results on search, just know that that's my team. And yes, I also have a YouTube channel called Aona Talks, and I was also an international student, and I came to BU in 2014. That was my first stop in the US. So that's me, and thank you for having me.
Thank you, Aona. We can't wait to hear and learn everything about UXR from you.
Oh, thank you.
And Brittany, it's your turn.
Thank you. Well, hi, everyone. Good afternoon. My name is Brittany Anderson. It's so nice to see so many familiar faces and so many familiar names too, looking at the participant list too. So thank you so much for having me. I currently work as a senior user experience researcher at Alaska Airlines. And before that, I worked at Ancestry on their user experience research team. So right now at Alaska, I work a lot on their revenue team with the flight searching, booking, ancillaries and upsells process. But when I was at Ancestry, I worked on their DNA testing and health team, trying to make that experience more seamless, looking at comprehension of the DNA testing results and design as well. My experience with Boston University actually jump-started my interest in user experience research. I took a class in my master's program and I fell in love with it from there, and I knew that's what I wanted to dedicate my career path towards. So I continued on to the PhD program in COM, the Emerging Media Studies program, and just focused my research on user experience from there. But I'm excited to chat with you all today and answer any questions that you have too.
Great, thank you, Brittany. We have a lot of students from Emerging Media Studies today, so they're good to have you with us. The last one, Michael Elasmar.
Oh, okay. Hello, my name is Michael Elasmar. This is my 30th year, 30 at BU. And believe it or not, long before there was a UXR industry, I stumbled upon basically what amounts to be UXR, although it wasn't basically called that. In sometime in the late 1980s, when I joined a team of researchers who were out to investigate why a large manufacturer of truck parts who had implemented a computer-based information system, which at the time was something new, was finding that most of their employees were not using the system. And lo and behold, when our team of researchers went into that particular company, after applying the traditional methods of research, such as focus groups, in-depth interviews, and surveys, we found out that the reason why they're not using the system is because of the interface. At the time, this was a revelation because most people assumed, what's with the interface? Of course, we can take it for granted. Any engineer can create an interface that everybody can use. And so the idea of user, experience research began at that point, although it wasn't even called user experience. It was all of a sudden the realization that the human-machine interaction is not as simple as most people think it is. And that's what got me going between having a foot in academia and a foot in industry. That's what got me going back in the late 1980s. And when I came to BU in 1993, that's what essentially got me to combine the academic background with the industry background. But anyway, so this is a story that most people probably don't know. But yeah, UXR has been around for a long time, although it hasn't been called UXR. It wasn't called that.
That's good to know, Michael. Hold everything about that until we move deeper into the next part. All right. So everybody, let's get started to talk about what really about UXR. Mina, how about we start from you? Can you briefly let us know, because we not only have grad students here with us today, we have a few undergrads who are, very passionate about doing research. What exactly is UX research, and why everyone talk about UXR, and why UXR becomes so important recently?
Okay, this is a really good question. And I guess to start off, to begin just really trying to understand what UX research is, where I typically begin is thinking about what are the first steps in really understanding how a product is developed and designed, and how we can best try to find ways to improve users' experiences of or of whether it's new products or even existing products, is to always start thinking about the users. And this is sometimes people say, well, it's kind of fundamental. Of course, we think about users, but the thing is that when we do start to think about the users and what they're experiencing, the questions that oftentimes come up for those who are in positions of being UX researchers is like, who are these users? Where are they from? What do they want? Why do they want what they want, right? How can a particular product, whether it's new or an existing product, can really get them what they want out of that experience when they're engaged with the product? And UX researchers, I would say, when it comes down to what their main job is to help answer these questions about what users want, what they need out of an experience. And instead of just making this intuitive guess based off of what we experience in our own personal lives, or even, what we may hear about other people experiencing, because it's the concept of research attached to the term UX research, we're not just going to say, oh, you know what, because I need the product, I use the product this way, everybody else does the same thing, right? And that's where it becomes really important, is that UX researchers really take on the role of designing and developing research strategies and implementing them to be empowered to answer those types of questions about users in a very data-driven way. And so you, as a UX researcher, are really the voice and the advocate for users in a way that really gives them the voice in what we typically call the product development cycle of any type of product that is being developed.
Thank you so much, Mina. It's really a good explanation. Aona, I want to move to you because I know that you've been doing UXR the whole time after graduating from BU. So the most of the questions that students asked me before is, what research method, okay, as a UX researcher, what methods or tools so you commonly used in your daily work? Can you give us some examples so we could better understand what kind of things that UXR do?
Yeah, sure. So for research methods, I would say it really depends on how you identify yourself as a researcher and how you call yourself, like what type of research are you most passionate and what kind of research value you mainly wanted to bring to your organization. So typically we see in the industry, we see some qualitative researchers versus pure quantitative researchers. Most of the time, a researcher is probably a mixed method researcher, which means they do qualitative research and they also do a lot of surveys, which is what we learned from grad school from like 722, 723, and 724. The research methods I use, I call myself more of a mixed methods researcher. I use definitely a lot of qualitative research methods such as usability testings, concept testings, all of these things that you see probably here on this diagram. In-depth user interviews, a lot of ethnography studies, contextual inquiries. These are all fancy names, but like basically the bare bone of it is you actually talk to a real user and you synthesize what they're telling you. You reach a point called saturation, which means you talk to enough folks and the things that they're telling you is basically there. It's like you get the bulk of it out, right? And that means your research is done. And on the other hand, we have quantitative research, which has very, very different aim on what is enough, like in terms of sampling design, sampling strategy. The typical quantitative research method that we use a lot of the time in the industry is probably survey, plus some behavioral analyses. Well, that part is a little tricky because it requires you to work with probably an engineer to literally log the user's behavior on your product so you can do some further analysis, like how many people clicked on some things, how long did they stay on this particular link, such and such. We also do some A/B testing and live experiments and data analytics, although I wouldn't say that it is solely a UX researcher's job. A lot of the times it requires a lot of collaboration with your data engineer, your data science team. So like for me, for example, I do a lot of like live experiment kind of analysis plan. So I write the plan for my team, basically telling them I believe this and this metrics are very important to learn, but I don't really do the data analysis because I just don't have the skill set. Like I write SQL queries so slow that it might probably just take my data scientist partner like 2 hours and it would take me a week. So that's like how we collaborate. But I would say just in terms of like the knowledge of research methods, it would be really, really great if a UXR knows most of the methods and they understand the problem space fully to know that which method that they need to pick so that they can find the right collaboration point within your organization. So yeah.
Thank you so much.
Sir.
Thank you. So I want to shift to Brittany, because Brittany, I know compared to Mina and Aona, they're from a tech industry. And then can I call you are in the aviation industry? So is there anything beyond what Aona just mentioned? Is there any other method or particular tools that you use for your own industry?
Yeah, well, Aona, I thought you did such a nice job summing up all the different research, even the qualitative and quantitative aspects of UXR. I think the only thing I might add is usertesting.com or unmoderated testing platforms are quite popular across different companies that have user experience research teams. So for those of you who are unfamiliar, what unmoderated testing is, a site like user testing, we can have individuals, usually panels of hundreds of thousands of people can sign up to be test takers. And so you can launch a test on one of those sites and you can have participants that are sort of like your target audience. So we might not be talking to our Alaska customers specifically, but we could be talking to frequent flyers, for example, or non-frequent flyers or people who have an elite status with an airline based on your targeting and recruitment criteria. And for unmoderated testing, if you think about it in contrast to moderated testing, also sometimes called facilitated user interviews, where someone's facilitating and talking to you, and unmoderated, kind of think of it like a survey, except not. Someone has a list of questions that they're going through for a prototype and different tasks, and that session will be recorded and you can watch it later on. So I feel like unmoderated testing is probably something that we do quite a lot, just in my current job and my past job as well. It's probably that one thing I would add on to it as well.
Thank you. Brittany, hold on there, because I want to give you the follow-up questions, because every time students, we talk about UX research, they will bring me another thing, UX design, which confused me at the very beginning, because I don't know what is the differences between two of them, why we need so many different umbrellas under UX track. So I know that we briefly shared information about this before. So I want to throw the questions. Should a UX researcher at least know a little bit or learn something about UX design in order to do their jobs better? What are the differences? Or UX research and UX design, do they work together, coordinate with each other, or they function in different ways or in the separate directions? Tell us something about that.
Yeah, well, I will say just kind of blanket for what is user experience design. As Dr. TV kind of explained what is user experience research. User experience designers, they'll take that research and then they'll make updates to a design or a prototype, proposing new designs or flows, interfaces to make an experience more engaging, user-friendly, intuitive. So we work really closely with our user experience designers. They're not siloed at all, because you want to make sure you're not just doing all this research and keeping it to yourself. You want to make sure you're continuously working to incorporate it into the product design. So every single study that I do, with some exceptions of some early generative research studies, are always in collaboration with a designer or a product manager. Product manager being someone who oversees a product lifecycle. So we might have our product manager over our flight searching experience at Alaska Airlines, for example. But kind of backtracking for should a UX researcher learn design, I would say you don't need to be an expert prototyper or have all of these design methodologies under your belt, but having a baseline understanding of different theories, the way people might approach looking at a site, some of the different tools that we use throughout the industry. Figma is a pretty popular design and prototyping tool. Envision's another prototyping tool. Sketch was one that we used to use at Ancestry. Just knowing a little bit so you can sort of speak their language. And oftentimes if you're testing a prototype, you'll need a link to that design prototype that the designers have made. So it's always good to know, first of all, just how to use it for testing purposes, but also just when you're making design recommendations at one of the ends of your research study, just being able to understand the language, sort of the process of design, how they might coordinate with engineers on the back end for implementing design updates. I think that's all really important. They all go together. They're definitely not siloed.
Thank you. How about you, Mina? Do you have to deal with a lot of like work together with UX designer?
Yeah, so it's interesting because with researchers and designers, especially in like the larger companies, right, they tend to have separate functions, but they work very closely together, as what Britt had just mentioned. But it is interesting because for smaller companies or companies where UX research could be less mature, it is possible that a UX designer could actually be also having a bit of research under their, tasks and responsibilities and duties like section. So it is, I just wanted to just point out, since like, I guess the three of us are coming from larger companies, right? It might be the case that you see postings for like a UX designer and potentially see responsibilities under that with some potential like research tasks at hand. You tend to see that more in like with startups, perhaps, right? Because there aren't as many resources, so you have less folks on the team. But for myself, at Meta, I mean, we work incredibly close with designers, and typically we call it the design team, as comprised of the designers, the researchers, and the content strategists, all working closely together and partnering with data scientists as well as engineers and like product marketing managers and stuff like that. So we have like the concept of cross-functional collaborations is really a big and essential component of of our jobs as UX researchers. And so that's why you oftentimes see research and design being conflated, and sometimes we are wearing those multiple hats to make sure we still have that baseline understanding, as what Britt mentioned, of design, even if we are not experts in using Figma and these types of design softwares.
Gotcha. Oh my God, this is really good answers. Finally answer my questions, because it's really hard for me to figure out what exactly two things are. Oh, Aona, I know that with this topic, you create a separate videos in your channels talk about UX design, and you quite often answer questions about UXD and a UXR. Anything you want to add to this based on what Brittany and Mina said? Is there anything you want? Okay, then is there anything?
Sorry, my computer just went to sleep. Yeah, I think they covered it really well. I do agree with Brittany and also Mina that it's very helpful if you just learn the language that the designers speak and you know why they're making certain design choices. So like a very simple example is, on the typical mobile devices like iOS and Android, the design language is very different. By design language, I mean if you want to put a drop-down menu on your app or on your interface, how the different system communicates that drop-down menu, how you design that icon is very different. So sometimes it requires designers to make very, very conscious choices, and it will be really helpful for the researcher to understand what are the trade-offs that they're making, so that they can be a more helpful partner. So
Gotcha.
Yeah, I think the basis is fine. Just learn the basis is fine.
Okay, let's move to the next part. Aona, I want to follow up with you on this because I know that you're graduate from MCR programs, and like what so many of our current students doing marketing communication research. And I want you to tell us something about what exactly job responsibilities that you're taking every day. I know you touched base a little bit in the previous topic. So tell us something more about the way that you grow from an entry level UX researcher into today's like managers, like senior UX researchers. What are those job responsibilities? And then tell us more about that. We want to know.
Yeah, I was secretly hoping that I didn't get caught on this question. It's a really hard question. I feel like I usually break job responsibilities down by mainly two buckets, but of course, as you move up the ladder, your responsibilities sort of shifted and it became a little bit different. But I would say as an early career researcher, or just like most of the on the ground doing the research work type of researcher, I would say two big buckets of responsibilities are first just doing the research, right? So you're trying to solve problems for the team, and also sometimes, you know, looking into the future to help the team understand what could be some problems we could solve for the next 2 years or so. So that's just like purely during research. And another big chunk of it is to communicate and collaborate with your cross-functional team members or coworkers so that you can influence a product strategy, that's what we call it, on a higher level. So what that means is that as you're doing research, you sort of want it to kind of like escalate it and bring it up to a higher level so that you can tell your team on this is the right thing to do, this is not what we should build. So, and also research is just like a very multidisciplinary function. So you can't really just do research on your own and in a corner. So you have to constantly talk to people, collaborate with people, understand what their heads are at. And sometimes that might also mean that you need to navigate through like organizational structures, sometimes a little bit of politics. I mean, I'm just being super honest, like politics is everywhere. Know who to kind of make connections with so that you can influence the right person with what you found. And then, like I said, as you move up the ladder and became more senior, then you carry another job responsibility of growing your team, right? And then kind of grow the research function in your company. Because one of the biggest challenges that's like always, it's always been there in the industry is like, oh, researchers don't always have a seat on the table. That's what we say, which means a lot of the times, you know, business and product decisions are not made by UX function, but purely made by, you know, some finance analysts, and the CEO decided that we're just going to do this because it looks like it's going to make us more money. So how do we show our influence and value to the company so that when they're making these decisions, they want to involve us into that conversation? That requires a more senior researcher to actually make that influence in the whole company. Well, whole company is a big word, but like in your organization, basically. Yeah, job responsibilities, and the day-to-day is just like meetings. Yeah.
I got you. What I hear you. So Mina, I want to turn into you because I want you to tell us something really behind those responsibility of UX researchers. What are those essential skills or we call foundational qualification our grad students need to know in order to build up their skill set while they're still in college?
So as you know, following up on what Aona just mentioned about like what are the core duties and responsibilities, like with those tasks that researchers do, clearly the cross-functional collaborative nature of our roles lends itself to that. Communication skills will probably be, I would say, one of the most essential skills to have, and especially coming out of the College of Communication, and we're in this field. I mean, it is, I think, one of the areas that we're very fortunate to be always using and developing in our field. And it's so important in terms of being able to not only communicate the research, and also as what Aona was bringing up, like if research, you know, in places might not always have that seat at the table, but it's about, well, how do I build alliances and allies within the company so that if I were to have an idea of how I would want to, you know, proceed with integrating research into a decision, that I have folks on board with me. And so that becomes really important, why communication. And also I wanted to bring up another major skill is empathy. So as a UX researcher, when you put on that research hat and you want to understand users, you want to understand their frustration, their expectations, their needs, and their goals, you need to be able to really empathize for them to want to share with you their raw feelings and attitudes. And so I think that is probably one of the most important skills to have, not only as a researcher, but as a collaborator when you're working with cross-functional partners like engineers or designers or, you know, of any sort of function. you need to be able to perspective take to understand, how do I make sure that they know that I'm also able to understand what their needs and goals are, which might be very different from the researchers' needs and goals, right? And so empathy goes a very long way. So really having an ability to perspective take so that you can always speak to people in a way that is able to tailor the work that you're doing in alignment with those common goals for everybody in the team.
Yeah.
And I would say other skills like having very strong design thinking skills, problem solving skills, really being able to be critical. And I think as a student, you know, we're always encouraged to think critically and being able to analyze, you know, issues in a very granular theoretical and methodological way, especially at BU at COM, because, you know, a lot of Dr. Elasmar's classes are just like, when you think about like 722, 23, 24, as Aona was mentioning, I mean, we are really taught to develop really strong problem solving, critical skills and analytical skills, and also some other skills like really being able to exercise that sense of curiosity goes such a long way, because as UX researchers, we are ones to be always asking questions about the users. Is this meeting the user's needs? What insights and discoveries, you know, do we as researchers need to be able to bring out to the team, you know, to bring forth to the team to really have meaningful insights so that we can develop the best products for our users. So I would say those are some of the core skills that come to mind.
Oh, thank you so much. But, you know, based on your observation and the words from Aona, that in order to be a really good UX researcher, it's a combination of skill set. It's not only about your ability to do the research, it's also about problem solving. It's about collaborative skills. It's about multitasking skills. That's something good to know. So I want to go to you, Brittany, because I know that you spent many years a master's program here and then PhD programs here, and then you, after you complete your PhD degrees, and you shift to industry side. So during all those years as students at COM, so how do you build up all those skills? I mean, not only on your research skills, but also everything that you need to prepare you well to be a good researchers for UX track jobs.
Yeah, that's a great question. So one thing that I think helped was going into my doctoral program. I knew that I wanted to pursue a career in user experience research. So I was looking at what methodologies do I need to know, kind of looking at, I learned so many of them, almost all of them in COM throughout my program. So making sure that you're in a program that aligns with what methodologies you might need to learn. And then if there might be a gap, let's say you really want to learn a new methodology and you have an opportunity throughout one of your classes, I say talk to your professors. You know, maybe you have a research project coming up. Is there any way you can tailor it around user experience research? Because you want to start building up portfolio pieces as well when you're looking to get into the field. Having been on hiring panels, we really value all of the research methodologies and skill sets, but it's also really important for us to see it in practice as well. Like, how have you, applied these research methodologies that you found? And so I would say sometimes you might be, well, I'm in school, how do I do that? Your professors are there to help you. If that's anything, I can hone in to all of our people attending the panel right now. Just go up and talk to them and say, hey, I know we have to incorporate these types of theories. I'd really love to tailor this project around user experience. Can we brainstorm together how I might be able to do that? And you might not be able to do that for every single project that you do, but just working with your professors to see, is this a research project or a theory project I can tailor to user experience research to use as a portfolio piece? I'd also recommend, as you're looking to build up your portfolio, starting now, starting super soon, and getting creative with what options you might have. For example, I used to work at a hair salon all throughout high school and all throughout grad school as well. And I just asked the owner of the salon, can I build your website for you? And I did my own user experience on that. So really think, what are some opportunities? Maybe your mother's best friend has a website that you can do some evaluative testing on. Just trying to get creative and seeing how can you informally build your portfolio just to begin to show people for internship applications, and job applications as well. Because I think it's so great that you're all in a program where you're really going to build up your research skills and analytical skills, critical thinking, but just also making sure that you're thinking about ways for how you can also build your portfolio during that time as well.
Thank you. That's very helpful. Start doing your research, start building your research portfolio is, I think it's the thing that our current students can start doing as a good start, because they do a lot of like projects. Well, they take 722, 723, 724, and then this is really helpful. Aona, how about you? Because I know that when you entered COM, you had a very absolutely different background during your undergrad studies. And then you shift to marketing research side and then be a UX researcher. What is your transition period, and how did you deal with that? And what things you've done in order to prepare yourself for that?
Yes, I have a BFA degree. So my bachelor degree is in like stage performance and theatrical singing and stuff like that, which is completely not related to research. To be super honest, I think aside from taking the class and putting efforts in actually the coursework, because that's like a big part of my research portfolio back then, is probably to find relevant internships in the industry. So it kind of preps you, gives you the language and the vocabulary that you need to talk to other people in the industry who are interviewers, and they want to know if you get them. Aside from that, a big part I think people don't really talk about is luck. But you can do a lot of things to gain that luck, or like to get luck struck, right? So the things that I did is to do a lot of networking, do a lot of like LinkedIn profile stalks to understand like what exactly are the skill sets that industry UXRs have that you may not have a chance to develop in grad school, and then make those outreach to actually just ask them those questions, right? You mentioned that you need to collaborate with X and Y team to accomplish this. Can you tell me a little bit more about what that process looked like? Because I'm a student and I don't really have a close connection to see what that looks like. So yeah, those will be my 2 cents. And also like, networking comes with a huge benefit of obviously to get you a job or internal referral. So if there is a big job opening that's opening up, so maybe they can put you, or you are the one that's top of mind for them. So I actually got my first full-time job like after my internship. My first full-time job was from a connection that I made during my internship. So that worked out for me. So but I was also very lucky.
Thank you. That luck's definitely come from your continue putting efforts into the field and then continue learning the skills that you think you need in order to do the full-time job as a UXR. Thank you so much for that. So let's talk about more about targeting a UXR job, because this year has been very difficult for everyone. So Mina, I want to go to you because you spend a lot of time teaching and then dealing with students. So, and then now you work in the industry. So from your observation, especially this year, what are those challenges and also the opportunities for our current students if they want to enter the industry and doing UXR?
Yeah, so this is a really good question. I have had a lot of students ask me what my journey was and what kind of challenges I faced when I was looking for opportunities in UXR. I will say this, and because I'm in a different situation where I was teaching for so many years and had really continued to have very strong relationships with students of mine. Like when I had read one of Britt's articles about the difference between academia and the industry in terms of research, that was like one of the most inspirational pieces I've come across. And it really got me thinking about just other paths and opportunities. And plus, that's coupled with Aona's amazing videos that she creates, because she is just like such an inspiration as an alum for, when we like just watching how she had really been very not only successful in UXR, but becoming a really strong mentor for a lot of folks. And I had watched all her videos and I was like, I am going to really understand from, an industry perspective, like how, someone who is a former student of ours here had also been facing, different, giving certain tips, right? So I was really involved in like just ways of getting as much information as possible, but I'm going to also plug one of the most, I would say the spaces that really inspired me as well was there's a Facebook group that's called From Academia to UXR. And this group has exponentially increased in size since January of this year. It is now almost like 12,000 members in this group. But someone who had started this group had come from academia and is now a researcher at Lego. And I would say that she and a lot of expert UXRs in this group are just phenomenal. I mean, the amount of just support that a lot of, folks who, have gone through to, be in the positions that they are currently in the industry, but also helping to mentor and give just advice, whether it's resume advice, whether it's feedback on portfolios, how to break into the industry. I mean, these are like the pockets of communities that I think are so amazing about, the folks who are just, trying to find a way to whether it's to make that leap from academia to UXR, or that they are already in the industry, but they are doing something, a bit different, but want to break in. So I would say like those kind of pockets of opportunities are absolutely valuable. And so if it wasn't for folks like Britt and Aona to serve as those sources of inspiration and to like walk through their journeys, and also, I mean, they shared very raw challenges and experiences. So I just wanted to make sure that everyone knows that that is what had also inspired me to really think about making that transition. But also challenges. I mean, I would say it is a tough time. And we are in a situation where there are intense economic challenges. It is certainly not, news to anyone that we've had so many layoffs happen recently, and it's been just heartbreaking. And I've seen posts from folks saying, should I even consider going into UXR because there's so many people being laid off, and what are those opportunities? Now it's more competitive. And it's tough because when I get questions like that for those who are still in the, have their jobs, and it certainly is like a very challenging landscape right now with jobs and opportunities for UXR. But I would say that those opportunities are still there. It doesn't mean that they're necessarily easy to get right now, given that there might not be as ample of opportunities as what it was like during the heat of the pandemic. But I would say this, that I would focus on what we can control, and what certainly we can control. I mean, Britt and Aona brought up so many great recommendations of really building that portfolio, doing what you can control to make your record stronger, to make your record more solid, finding any opportunity to collect data, to get research insights, to turn those into projects that, and if you're already in, of course, having class projects, to really turn those into, solid projects that you can feel really proud to showcase in a portfolio interview when that comes, so you are really controlling what you can in the meantime, despite the challenges that we're facing with the economy. And then also, as Aona brought up, the importance of networks, right? There's no way if you go on LinkedIn right now, you're not going to see just a massive wave of people who are they're struggling, but they're also fighting through pain and adversity. But with that is the beauty of support and people elevating opportunities. And there are a lot of sheets out there that have an ample amount of current positions in so many areas of research. So please do not lose that hope and let kind of the current economic situation dampen that, your passion to pursue UXR. So I just wanted to bring that up, because control, of course, what we can control is probably the most important lesson that I'm also facing, and also helping others who have been laid off to also remind ourselves of those opportunities still, and what the path forward can be.
I love that. I often told the students as well. So we all in this difficult situations all together. So instead of just focus on those uncertainty, we could just focus on what we can do to improve ourselves and then use ourselves to prepare for anything any uncertainty in the future. Thank you so much for your input, Mina. Brittany, I want to turn to you. Anything you want to add to this on how the current students can do to fill in the gaps between academia and industry after you graduate?
Yeah, for filling in the gaps, I think just getting familiar with how industry research may differ or be similar to academic research is a great starting point, because then you're sort of knowing what you're getting yourself into, so to speak. And one way you can do that is, I'm a big advocate for internships. A lot of internships, from my experience at Alaska and Ancestry, will feed into full-time positions. I know people who have gotten their start in internships. That's how I personally got my start into a full-time role. I had a summer internship at Ancestry. They offered me a full-time job while I was finishing up my dissertation. So that's a great way to get your foot in the door, and also say, is this the field that I really want to be into? Am I enjoying the research that I'm doing? And an internship is a smaller commitment than a full-time job employment is. So you can ask all your questions there. That's a great way to fill in the gaps. I also think kind of first, in order to figure out kind of what gaps you need to fill, talking to people and saying, what are their day-to-day roles and activities. I think it's called UX Coffee Chats. That's an online mentoring program. I think that's what it's called. But asking your professors questions. I'm always here if you want to email me and ask me any user experience questions as well, to chat about how it may be similar or different to industry and academia. I think just knowing what the differences are and how you can try to fill in those gaps is the first step. That and internships. Or contract roles as well. Probably start with an internship and then go into a contractor position, but those are just some add-ons if that's helpful.
Thank you, Brittany. Aona, anything you want to add to this?
No, they covered it so well. I mean, I always sometimes get these questions and I don't have a great answer, so I'm just like documenting their answers. So I'm just going to steal it from Mina and Brittany.
Thanks. The last one, I want to go to Dr. Elasmar first, because I've received a lot of questions from current students. Lou, what courses that I need to take while I'm still in grad school in order to gain all those skill set or fundamental qualifications that I need in order to do UX jobs? It's all yours, Dr. Elasmar. Share us with anything you want.
Oh, I mean, there's nothing better than hearing it from those who are in the field in terms of what are the skills, what are the things that you need to know. Because no matter how many times I would say that, there's always a suspicion that because you're saying it because this is what's in the classes that you teach, rather than in the classes that you teach are relevant to industry. And so I think hearing today, thank you for putting this panel together, hearing it from those who are actually in the field, who are working on these things, a couple of things become very clear. And let me accentuate what was said earlier. One is that UXR is not UX design. There are lots of people who come and say, should I learn how to do design? No. You're doing, if you want to train yourself to do UXR, you have to be, as was said earlier, maybe take some electives in design so you can understand who you're going to be working with, but you're not going to become a UX designer. If you want to become a UX designer, then you're in the wrong place, because we don't have a program in UX design. The same thing is true for data science. A lot of people come and say, wait, UXR, that's data science. So I need to take data science. No, if you want to take data science, then you're in the wrong program. The College of Communication does not do that. However, the College of Communication does offer classes that give you an entry point into data science so you can basically learn how to communicate with the data scientists that you're likely to be working with as part of another team to actually get the type of information that you yourself are not able to get by yourself. Now, so if you look at the job descriptions of Microsoft, of Google, of basically Meta for UXR, you'll see that there is a very, very strong base in traditional, basically, methods of science that involve survey research, that involve focus groups, that involve in-depth interviews. This is your core. This is your core. Everything else is fine. You can add on to the core. And I say this because a lot of people come say, oh, yeah, but that's old stuff. I want to do the new stuff. I want to do new stuff. But wait a second. Play up what you're strong at. Your strength is going to be the core. Don't play up what you're weak at. And this is actually something that I've been saying for years. Every year I get the same questions, and every year I have to say the same thing. Play up your core. This is where your strength lies. This is what you need to actually be able to have a portfolio of research about. This is what you need to be able to demonstrate as your expertise. Now, once you have the core all set, then there's nothing wrong in taking electives in the actual UX design, so you can actually get to know what the others who you're going to be working with basically do, as well as basically understand the language. And as many of you know, some years ago, I actually started offering, or at least negotiated a deal whereby we have now a concentration, or an elective concentration. People who want to do that can actually get a certificate in data analytics. Now, the certificate in data analytics is an add-on. It's not mandatory. It's for people who want to do that. And in combination with a master's of science degree and a certificate in data analytics, what you have a strength in the core, which is your master's of science degree, and then you have a strength in the add-on. So essentially, that's it. That's what it boils down to. A couple of more things just to echo what was said in here. In addition to the core knowledge, which is actually what your strength should be in the College of Communication. If you're in the College of Communication, make sure that the core knowledge is what your strength is and what you play up, right? In addition to that, in addition to any other technical knowledge that you basically want to do, as I've said, as was said repeatedly, you also have to have common sense, really. I mean, common sense essentially is knowing how to communicate with people in order for them to like you. I mean, you want to be non-abrasive, you want to be accommodating, you want to have empathy, as Dr. Tsay-Vogel said earlier. You also want to have essentially a sense of diplomacy, meaning even though you don't need people, you want to basically start working with these individuals when you're in a work environment in order for you to establish good ties with these individuals. Now, while you're at school, you can practice these skills, right? You can practice your skills with your teams. If you have team members, if you're working with team members, I mean, if you are being abrasive to your team members, then chances are you're going to be abrasive out there. You're not going to work very well. I mean, it's common sense. So use these opportunities to kind of practice that. And then one more thing that was said is, where do you apply? One thing that wasn't mentioned is that we do have 2 agencies within the College of Communication where people can actually volunteer to work as a researcher, whether it be a UX researcher or a consumer insights researcher, and it's Ad Lab and basically PR Lab. Both of these places basically have a research component that would be filled by those who are specializing in research and not by those who are specializing in either advertising in general or public relations. So again, keep your eyes on the prize. The prize is the core strength that you have. And this is something that I can't even repeat enough, because every year it's the same issue. They come tell me, I want to do a certificate on this. I want to do an online certificate on. Wait. Before you do any of these things, strengthen your core. Demonstrate that this is your strength. This is where you differentiate yourself from anybody else. But anyway, that's my 2 cents worth of advice on that. Oh, and by the way, not everybody can take the MCR classes, but there are certainly other classes within the college that teach, I guess, comparable materials as the MCR classes. So whatever you end up doing, essentially make sure that the core is your strength.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Elasmar. Core is your strength. This is my first takeaway from today. Mina, anything you want to add to this before I open up to the floor and welcome all questions?
Yeah, Dr. Elasmar did a really great job describing how you really want to lean on those strength areas of yours and to really leverage them. So I really love that. I would also add that coming from academia, we are taking classes that could be more theoretical in nature. And I just want to say, I've taught, whether it's like communication theory or media effects or, psychology of emerging media, those types of classes. And I just always want to make sure that I advocate for the importance of theory and scholarly, research, because I oftentimes feel like people kind of say, oh, well, it's too abstract. How does it apply to the industry? People won't understand the language. And I really just want to just, kind of flag that that's not true, and that there might need to be some effort that is made to really find ways to effectively communicate the work that is from academia, because all of the work that you learn about how do people process information, how do they engage with media messaging, right? The mental models of these are really important. Conceptual frameworks are really important in UXR. And we don't just go into a project without thinking about what the literature has told us about the ways people communicate, the way people process and are impacted by messages. And that is like a core strength. I'm going to go back to Dr. Elasmar, the core strength, right? Of like some of the valuable knowledge you've not only gained in the field of communication, but like we go into UXR almost like a glove sometimes. People are like, oh my goodness, you really, like your work really speaks to like how, like understanding how we can be able to, really understand users' experiences with products, because there's that really strong communication element, right? And so I just wanted to mention that, because it will take maybe a bit of adjustment on how you turn maybe certain types of knowledge and insights to make it practical, like thinking about if you were to find X, Y, and Z, right? In terms of, these are some message features that might help elevate people's moods, right? Like, let's just say that as an example. Then how do you turn that into an actionable solution, right? To a designer to say, well, if we know this about how users are, experiencing content, or, how they're searching on a website, then what that tells us is that we want to potentially consider these in the design decisions that you make, right? Where we might put a button or how we would change the navigation, right? So I'm just kind of bringing that up, like that's the step that oftentimes can be a bit challenging from the academic side, is that we're not just writing about knowledge that we contribute to the literature, but we're translating that into actionable, practical solutions. So I just want to say that all of the research that is being conducted among communication, students in our college, right, at Boston University, is very much practical, but it's about making sure to speak to that. So I just wanted to put that out there, and to make sure that I mitigate anyone's concerns that the work we're doing is too scholarly or academic, because that's not true.
Thank you so much, Mina. And before I move to you, Aona, I want to go to Brittany first, because I want to hear something about from you. It's your advice on how international students who wants to do UXR in America, how should they do? And then before you, I want to move to Brittany. Brittany, any other things that you want to add to this before I move to Aona?
I'm just reading the list again. I thought everyone summed up everything so well. The only other, I guess, skill I can think of that I didn't hear talked about quite as much would be time management. I know that sounds so silly, But the pace of user experience research in industry is quite a lot faster than, at least my experience was in academia. And the reason being, it might just be, oh, they just want the insights really quickly. But if you can't provide the insights in time that they need to make a design decision, they will move on without you. And so you want to make sure that you're meeting deadlines and kind of staying on top of that, just so you can get all of your strategic work into the company decision making. And kind of like we were talking about earlier, kind of as you're getting more experience throughout your career as a user experience researcher, and kind of talking to your stakeholders about, hey, you know, here are some things that I'm noticing, getting ahead on those discussions before the designs start happening. I think time management is really important as well. That's the only other thing I wanted to add in on.
Valuable, very helpful, Brittany. Very last, Aona, because we got so many international students here with us today. As an international student from MCR program who is also doing UX research, your advice will be very valuable.
Yeah, I can't help but thinking that I feel like I have to go back to what everyone already said, which is the biggest thing is your core strength, which is your research craft rigor, like how you actually conduct research in a rigorous way. And this is like the same whether you're an international student or not, or for someone who's born here, right? That is the core thing that you'll be judged and evaluated as you're applying for jobs. Interviewers will look at those portfolio of research and see if they can poke any holes, right? So that's one big thing. The other thing is, of course, like people skills, like the common sense thing that Professor Elasmar was saying. You need to be a very, very good communicator. Now that has a little bit of connection to international students. I know a lot of us don't, English is not our first language. It's not my first language. So it's a little bit challenging to understand how to talk colloquially with your potential coworkers in the future that who are born and raised here, who will understand the cultural references. I have a video on my YouTube channel talking about how I learned English myself and understand these like cultural references. I think one big thing is you have to actually make a lot of extra effort. Oh my gosh, yes, that's me. Yeah, you have to actually make a lot of extra effort to immerse yourself in that environment. So I'm Chinese. I came from China. So I remember when I was in grad school, there were a lot of also fellow Chinese students. So we're always just kind of like partying together and just like talking about like, you know, random topics. But I didn't really actually put a lot of efforts in actually immersing myself in the international environment by, you know, going to international students mingle events and actually talk to other people, understand how they communicate with each other and what's considered more appropriate, especially in a work and professional setting. So I think that's something that international students really need to do, especially because now you're in this environment. Leverage this environment, make friends, make connections, branch out, jump out of your comfort zone to listen to like NPR news that you understand nothing about, right? But just to gain that familiarity with the language. And last but not least is the visa issue. That is a very, very big hurdle. I do believe that I think what Mina said, right? It's like, this is something that's very outside of your control. I went through exactly the same process. I was trying to find an employer that would sponsor my H-1B visa. Took a lot of turns. I had an internship with Disney that they intended to give me a full-time offer, but then I was like, I need a sponsorship. And they were like, oops, sorry. So I had to like go with a different route. So I've been through a lot of these things. I was waiting for the lottery system to give me a good result. So this thing, I would say, you know, besides doing your best on what you can control, a lot of these things you have to kind of embrace the fact that it is outside of your control. It is something that I would say just a lot of people were just too hard on themselves in this process. I was very hard on myself too. I was like crying every day. I was like, nobody's gonna sponsor me. But it will happen as long as you have perseverance. I mean, even if you don't, you have already gained so much valuable knowledge and experience throughout this process that you're prepping yourself to get that full-time job. And that those things will be invaluable whatever country you go in the end, if you didn't get that sponsorship.
I can tell how much I agree with you, Aona, and I feel so grateful you brought into this topic. And I also want to give a huge shout out to your YouTube video, because that's also a very good resource for me to learn what UXR. So I put the screenshot here. This is Aona's YouTube channel, Aona Talks. I strongly recommend this channel to all the students who are interested in learning UXR, data analysis, or if you just want to know the tech life, and then what life that Aona is currently having as a UX researcher in the tech industry. So go check everything. She covered a lot of different topics and very useful, very helpful to everyone here today.
Thank you so much. So flattered.
Yes, thank you so much for all of you. So I'm going to move to the very last and then stopping sharing my screen, and then so we could see all of us, everyone face to face, and then open the floor to all of you. I encourage everyone come here with us and bring your questions. This is the great opportunity to ask. So here's your opportunity. Okay, I see we have a question from chat. So could someone speak to the collaborative nature among the different roles in industry? First, the content creation, data science, and then the third one is user research, and 4 is user design, maybe a particular project
maybe
as a
each, but you know, one of those.
Hi, Zan.
Hi, Lou.
Hi, go ahead and then, yeah, go ahead and see your question. We're here.
So yeah, I was just curious if maybe you guys had an example where like maybe there was a moment where you're like, I felt very impactful, or maybe there was a barrier, and it could have been conversation with the data science or scientist, or you know, like a campaign where you thought, oh, my data made an impact, or my research.
Okay, Mina, you want to jump in first?
Yeah, so because of the cross-functional nature of how research operates, at Meta, I mean, there is impact can come in so many different ways. I'm thinking about, you know, my research team, you know, we're all working to support a product. And when it comes down to some of the recent work that we've been working on, it's, you know, it could be that specifically one that comes to mind on a high level is just thinking about like pulling out, you know, what are some barriers that users have, right? What are the major pain points? And I'm saying it just on a high level, just for purposes of making sure that I still respect confidentiality and the work that we're doing, but just in terms of like how that has made an impact. Like we've had insights where we've really brought up like really raw, like frustration and pain points that users have, and then the next thing you know, we partner closely. You brought up data scientists, Zane, so like, you know, user research, like the data can really speak to you know, the depth of like the motivations, the needs, and the frustrations, right, that users have. But then we can also pair that up with like behavioral and log data, which is like to see whether it matches to like what users are doing in the system, whether it be, are they clicking into the, you know, certain spaces, or, you know, using certain features, right? Or are they coming back? And if we're noticing that these pain points that are being experienced, right, is somehow correlated to that they are not coming back, right, and to our product, then we bring those kind of, you know, top barriers to the product team. And the team could be, of course, comprised of, you know, engineers, designers, product managers, and we really talk very closely and say, look, these are some major issues, and our product is not satisfying these users. needs because of X, Y, and Z. And therefore, that all of a sudden you see impact being made in the iteration of the product and the design, and those get implemented. And then of course, there's like research that's foundational that drives strategy, and then there's also research that's evaluative where you can continue following those iterations. And so I hope I hope that was like, answering your question in terms of really seeing how research can create impact into improving the product in the long term. And I've been really fortunate to see that in my space. We were, in the space of developing the metaverse, and we've been able to make impact on product development as well as strategy.
Thank you.
That was really helpful.
Thank you. We have a question from the current second year MCR students asking, we all take courses like we mentioned, 722, 723, 724 is the core courses within MCR program. So during the interview or on our resume, how can we just showcase all those skills or all those the qualification we gain from taking these courses and then during the interview or on our resume? Brittany, I want to start from you first. Thank you.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I will say my background was in the Emerging Media Studies program, but I did think I took, it was either 722 or 723 with Dr. Elasmar. So one thing is when you're talking to a recruiter, they're going to ask you about your research background. Tell me a little bit about your research background. What type of research do you do? And those courses are so well lined up to give you a storytelling option. I think our client for my project was Pokemon Go, if that gives you an idea to how long ago it was. And so you started with a competitive market review, then you went down into what are some of the, what's the literature saying about it, and you ended up doing a survey and conducting a survey. So you have all of these different pieces in a storytelling format that it's so perfectly packaged for you to share with a recruiter or during an interview. It wasn't working with a client because we weren't working with Nintendo at the time, but it still gives you a storytelling element of walking through those different pieces, why you did each step of the research. That's something you may get asked as well. How do you select which research methodology that you did? And I feel like those classes set you up so well to say, I started off with this because I really wanted to learn the lay of the land, who our competitors were. We then did an interview, or maybe we did a survey to conduct this, and you have the rationale behind it as well. So I think those classes are very helpful in giving you that storytelling aspect for why you selected the method you did. Of course, it was part of the class, but you also have for why and the impact that it had and how you continued on throughout your research process from there.
Thank you so much. And one more thing added is I remember Aona also create a videos on 10 questions on UXR interview. So if you could just go there and then check, you could find all the answers about Aona, saying how do you prepare for all those answers and how do you show yourself all those skills and qualifications during interview and on your resume. That's additional information add to this. So the last, I know that we talk a lot about this today. So the last two questions, and I hope we could just answer before I close the panel today, is were there any cases when you didn't have experience with a particular research but had to implement at work? Aona?
Oh, I just assumed it was me. Yes, definitely. I don't think as a researcher you can max out on your capacity on learning all the research methodologies. That's what I'm assuming that this is referring to. All the methodologies in the world that you can possibly master. There's just like so many of them. And I think I talked about it in one of my videos as well. Like there are a lot of fancy new research methods that just keep popping up in the market. Like this year it was like persona, next year it was like jobs to be done. So like there are, yeah, it's just impossible for you to master all of these research. So my take on it is, first, most of these fancy new research, I'm calling just like the ones that's popping up in the market every year, and that becomes the next hot thing that everybody is talking about it. All of these, again, has a core, right? Jobs to be done's core is in-depth user interviews and survey on a very large scale. And the same thing with persona, same thing with all the other fancy methods. So learn your core is super, super important. If you understand the basis of applied statistics and you learn the basis of how to conduct user interviews so you're not biasing your interviewee, that's super, super important. Another thing is, if your organization really has a need that I just need you to use this super fancy new method that we keep hearing that we wanted to do the same, typically in industry, researchers go with two routes. First route is getting a research vendor to do those work. Well, this really is depending on your budget of your organization, but a lot of the times we would offset, we would kind of like have a dedicated, what we call OPEX, which is like budget for other organizations to do these research for us. So we do use that route. And the other thing that I usually use is kind of like asking the stakeholders or our coworkers back at, why do you want to try this fancy method, right? What is the core problem that you're trying to solve? Is there any other way that I can use to kind of give you that answer? Because a lot of the times people don't really understand what a specific research method could entail and how would they do with the artifact. Sometimes they see some fancy posters out there and highlighting some segmentations. They were like, we need to have the same. But what do you want? What do you want to do with these segmentations, right? Can you actually apply different product strategies to these segments of users? If not, can we find a more practical way to give you those insights that actually can help you with product development? So yeah, I don't know if I answer your question, but that's generally my approach.
Thank you. And the last question, I promise that this is, I know that we've been talked too much today. So could you ask, when having an interview, software engineers usually solve tasks, but what UX researcher engineer technical interview look like? Anyone who wants to share the input of this?
I can take a first attempt at this one. So are you just asking what maybe might happen in a typical user experience interview? Oh, I also just wanted to add on to the last one. Like, let's say you don't know a current methodology that you're being asked to do, like a diary study. Don't be afraid to ask for help. It's not a bad thing. Like Aona was saying, there's so many different methods in user experience. We just want to say, don't get discouraged if you don't know a specific method. Think of it as a learning experience and coordinating with your other team members. So I just want to say it's not a negative if you don't know how to do a certain method or you haven't experienced it yet. But for what usually happens in a user experience interview, in the hiring panels that I've been on and in the interviews that I've done getting jobs myself, usually it starts off with a portfolio review once you're at that stage. So I would be giving an overview of some of my recent projects that I've done or projects. Sorry, I'm at an Airbnb and the dogs are barking outside if you can hear that. So I'll give an overview of the different projects that I've done, usually what methodology I did, why I chose that methodology, what the impact was, or what the next steps were. So usually it starts off with a presentation of your work, and then you might have a question and answer session with different members of your team. Usually it's not just one interview. Sometimes you'll have your portfolio review and then interviews back to back with different team members like researchers or designers. I know on the research side, we might usually give scenarios, like imagine you wanted to figure out why engagement was low on, using Alaska as an example, let's say we want to figure out why engagement was low on our mobile app, or maybe why booking was down on one part of our site. We might then ask, how would you begin to investigate this and why? Just so we can see how they're thinking critically and give them a real life sort of scenario if they were a member of our team, in case that's helpful.
Okay, thank you so much, Brittany. Thank you, everyone. I'm going to close the panel today. I want to say I deeply appreciate Mina, Aona, Brittany, and Dr. Elasmar's time and support, and everyone's participation in this panel discussion today, and then give us a great opportunity to learn the knowledge from all of you, and then to share your experience, your knowledge, and it's very helpful, very valuable. I know it's over time, and then because we really touched base a lot of things today. Thank you all for joining with us today. And I hope everyone has a very warm Thanksgiving. And then I hope to see all of you again in the future. Thank you. Bye, everyone. Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lou.
Thank you, Mina. Thank you so much. Thank you. Bye, Mina.